Ooh, hey, how's it going? Hey, what is up? Yeah, so just to get just so I don't bury the lead here. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Uh, so definitely. How do I put this? Very mixed feelings about that episode. That's for sure. Very mixed feelings about 610 Nippy. A lot of emotions here in respect to everything that happened, in respect to the entire episode being a Gene episode. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really enjoyed a lot of that episode. Again, as someone who's so particular about um, continuity in this series, the recast, it hurt a little bit. I will admit, I don't know if anyone was able to watch that without being a little bit taken aback by that recast, but I think the episode had its moments for sure. We learned actually a lot about the timeline, actually, based on the dialogue of this episode as well, something I noticed right away. But yeah, again, mixed emotions about this episode for sure. So yeah, I agree. Dylan two times. The recast did hurt. I agree, and yeah, definitely noticeable. I agree at Cody Madman. It was noticeable. I mean, no way around it. There's no way around that recast. It hurt. That hurt a little bit, but I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of this episode, and really surreal to get this entire Gene episode right here. And as I talked about actually in my live stream preview of this episode, the reporting that Walton Jesse was going to appear in this episode, even according to the Albuquerque Journal, a very reputable newspaper, not just some guy who's rambling into a camera on the internet, but a reputable newspaper reported that they were going to appear in 610. So, definitely you got to take all that with a grain of salt, even with reputable newspapers. So, they're not right about everything clearly. So, yeah, definitely a lot of it was kind of cool to see all of the sort of hidden meaning behind this episode, including the title. In addition to, I don't know if anyone saw this, but right before this episode aired, I saw a Variety YouTube video that where Bob Odenkirk stated that the new character played by Carol Burnett, aka Marion, was related to someone we've already seen before. And he did say you'll never guess it, in a million years. And he was absolutely right. I would have never guessed it would have been, Jeff's mother to sort of get right into this episode right here. So, well, it wasn't an interview. It was sort of a YouTube video where they sort of reacted to a bunch of fan theories at Cody Madman, and I did watch it before this episode aired, and that was kind of a big thing that Bob Odenkirk teased that Marion was related to a character that we already saw, and I was thinking, who in the world could this, who is she related to? Definitely, Jeff would have been probably the very last person on this list for sure. So. And yeah, just thinking about how to break down this episode, it's kind of hard. I almost didn't even view it as, act after act after act. It really, as just being an entire Gene episode, it just bled. It almost was just one long sort of Gene, scene that just sort of bled together. I didn't even view it as an episode which has an act and an act and an act, because a traditional Better Call Saul episode will usually ebb and flow between the story of Saul and Kim and maybe Gus and Mike and the cartel and Lalo and all of that, the sort of episodes we've seen before. So this one it was a little bit surreal just to see the entire episode in black and white for sure. So at Colt, I agree. There were definitely two scenes there. That security guard scene, that one, my heart was racing there, just trying to figure out what was going to happen there. Was this the end for Gene? And at the same time, sort of at the very end of that episode as well, when we saw Gene in that department store, when we saw Jeff leaving the restroom, where it was basically revealed to us that in order to enact the scam, he had to stay overnight in the men's room, I guess, for the entire night. So yeah, a lot of thoughts on this episode for sure. So yeah, I definitely noticed the Jim O'Hare, that's for sure, at J Stu. So, but yeah, I mean, it was I think Jeff had plastic surgery. So again, and it's going to be hard to sort of break down this entire episode because it's kind of just one long plot here. But in my just summation of how they wrote Saul, aka Gene, out of the sort of problem that he experienced at the end or at the very beginning of season 5 of Better Call Saul in the episode entitled Magic Man, was that they kind of just, how do I put this? They kind of turned Jeff, the cab driver, into sort of a, naive criminal, if you will. I wasn't expecting that per se. Jeff, he definitely seemed much more cunning and intelligent when I saw him, speaking only for myself, in season 5 of Better Call Saul in the episode entitled Magic Man. But they definitely, in order for Jimmy to sort of, Jimmy, Saul, Gene, in order for Gene to sort of get out of this very tough situation here, I guess they sort of painted him as this sort of dumb criminal who he was able to manipulate, because as we saw at the very end of this episode, when he got Jeff and his I guess sidekick, who doesn't have a name, if I'm not mistaken, they didn't reveal a name in this episode, but basically the way Saul enacted this plan was that in order for them to be sort of dead to rights guilty, he did all sorts of things kind of akin to the Sandpiper case with renting the car out of state, and sort of even like a RICO case, if you will, where you're going across state lines to do illicit means. So if they ever did turn in Gene Takovic, I guess they would both be going to prison for a very long time. So, but again, I'm a little bit perplexed here in the sort of grand premise of this episode, because yeah, OG Jeff did seem more clever and sinister. He definitely seemed much more clever in Magic Man, but he really was sort of very sort of dumb and easily manipulated in this episode for sure. And just sort of thinking about it, I kind of harken back to that teaser that they displayed to us of Gene walking by that $5 million reward for any information leading to the arrest of Saul Goodman. And I can't imagine that maybe the tens of thousands of dollars in merchandise that they stole would be anything near akin to what they could have gotten by just turning him in via illegal means instead of illegal means, excuse me. So yeah, I definitely like that for sure. I kind of liked this whole entire premise where Gene just couldn't, remain this sort of bland, colorless person who was just, basically dead inside. I agree. At Samuel Fisher, I kind of like that premise absolutely. But again, it's kind of weird. The one thing, the entire premise of just Jeff the cab driver just really threw me for a loop. Not let alone the recast. I mean, the recast absolutely, but I don't know. I just expected Jeff to be a little bit more intelligent and cunning, to tell you the truth, and not. So he was basically a dumb criminal. He kind of reminded me of the Wet Bandits a little bit from Home Alone, if you will. That's what kind of reminded me of. The sort of trope of the dumb criminal, if you will. But I guess maybe that is possible, where you have these, the character Jeff wasn't as cunning as we all thought at Universal Basic Ramen. Jeff ruined everything, but I mean, yeah, besides the sort of Jeff angle of it all, which I mean was going to be a disappointment, I feel, just based on, at least how much I enjoyed the continuity of this series. Other than that, it was, pretty surreal for sure. Pretty surreal to just see Gene Takovic like this. And at Caesarus, after all that, a happy ending. Definitely kind of funny when they teased that after episode 607, Planet Execution. It was actually a Gene Takovic quote. I would have never guessed that, talking about how Nippy was, found safe and sound. The whole, plot, the whole sort of manipulation here at the very beginning of the episode, where we see, sort of getting into it here, where we learn that this character Marion is none other than the mother of Jeff the cab driver, and we can see that when she's riding her scooter home, she encounters this snow bank which she can't get over. And with the benefit of hindsight, we definitely know that Gene concocted the scam in order to get close to Jeff, the cab driver. And of course, we see him helping Marion here, engaging in conversation under the guise of, oh, we just happen to bump into each other because I'm putting up posters for my missing dog, Nippy, hence the episode title. At Relax and Sleep, the new Jeff was worse than the 200-pound Todd. Yeah, I mean, my goodness. I mean, the recast that's in and of itself was not ideal. I mean, there's no one who can argue otherwise, but I'm still a little bit taken aback by how they just sort of made him very, he was not a worthy adversary of Gene Takovic whatsoever. That's the only thing that I was kind of expecting a much more, like sort of a a real sort of cat and mouse game. Again, it could never be akin to something like Lalo and Gus, nothing like that, but I definitely thought Jeff would be a much more worthy adversary, so that was a little bit unexpected. But to kind of get into it, we see Jean concoct this plan with the snow embankment so she can't get her scooter across under the guise of putting up posters for his missing dog. And of course, when he helps Marion, he then, of course, cuts, I believe, the power cable to her scooter. And then, of course, the big reveal following the end of the cold opening scene here is that we see that none other than Jeff the cab driver comes home after a day of work likely, and he is just absolutely perplexed to see the man he saw in the mall in Omaha, Nebraska, Saul Goodman, aka Gene Takovic. And man, when I was watching this scene, I was having a little bit of a, I don't know what the word is, but I just, in my head, I was like, this stinks. I wish it was the OG Jeff. And just to see the OG Jeff, to just see his reaction to seeing sort of Saul Goodman pulling a fast one on him, that would have been unbelievable if we saw that. But again, it really threw me for a loop here for sure. And I know there have been some recasts for sure. Like, I mean, there's been how many? 3, 4 granddaughters of Mike Ehrmantraut, Kaylee Ehrmantraut, but again, this was so unideal. I talked about this in a past live stream about how it was likely had to do with the pandemic. I could get into a little bit, but hey, thank you so much, T, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Hey, Anton, love the streams. The recast not only changed the actor, but seems to change the character. No way OG Jeff would have went along with this. Yeah, you do wonder this. I'm going to have to listen to the Insider podcast here again. I was very taken aback by how they sort of, the personality of Jeff. When Jeff accosted Saul Goodman, Gene Takovic in the shopping mall, and thank you again so much for the super chat, T. I tend to agree with what you're saying, everything you're saying here. I saw him as such a worthy adversary, and I thought, how in the world is Gene going to get out of this? But again, he was it was kind of, pretty interesting, the whole manipulation that happened here, and, I don't know, it was kind of surprising where, he could have turned him in for the reward money, but instead he wanted to be in the game. He was this sort of criminal who was, I guess, he sort of fell in love with the romanticism of crime and pulling the scam. That's at least what I got when they had this conversation after this initial conversation in the kitchen here. But, yeah, it's, you wonder, that's a great question there about whether or not the change in the character, the actor playing the character changed the entire story arc of Gene and the cab driver. You wonder. I'll have to listen to the Insider podcast this week for sure, but that's a great question right there, T. Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm very curious to see what the creators have to say about this, about the recast for sure. And yeah, so at Maxwell Kagan, I will get to that as well. That dialogue in respect to the sort of Nebraska football is actually very pertinent to what year this episode took place. But yeah, again, just really taken aback by the change in Jeff's personality, and yeah, it was pretty. Again, I'm still sort of a little bit sort of perplexed by that, to tell you the truth. At Ronald Nash Jr., thank you so much for the super chat. Recast was better for what they needed for this episode. We all thought Gene/Saul would panic, but he's 1,000 times smarter than a scummy cab driver. That's a great point, Ronald Nash Jr., where he definitely seemed to be on his heels, and it seemed to be that he maybe had, I wouldn't say met his match, but was about to undertake the the sort of the proverbial jousting of, oh shit, the mic fell down there, the proverbial jousting of a worthy adversary at Ronald Nash Jr. That's kind of what I got from the meeting they had in Magic Man. But yeah, that is a great point here where we were reminded in this episode that Saul is very cunning. And while Gene Takovic might have been very meek and reserved of a character by nature, Saul Goodman was very cunning and very crafty and was able to manipulate himself out of this bad situation here for sure. So, yeah, you do wonder. You do wonder for sure. And again, if this was the OG Jeff and he was sort of not as cunning as I thought he was when we saw him in Magic Man, I don't know how it would have sort of been taken. I almost maybe would have believed that more, to tell you the truth. Maybe he just would have been so on his heels that sort of Saul Goodman was able to flip the script on him completely and sort of, attack him on his home turf here, a total blindsiding of that. Again, the recast was just absolutely terrible. I mean, I admit it, it stinks. it really was not ideal whatsoever in respect to the visual continuity of the show, but it is what it is. I still absolutely love this universe. I still love Breaking Bad. I still love Better Call Saul. I talked about how it was likely that just the filming, I guess, regulations and requirements based on the pandemic was likely why the actor couldn't go between his HBO show and this show, because I wouldn't imagine why he couldn't come for one episode. Potentially, this is all we're going to see of him. But yeah, really great points you raised, Ronald Nash Jr., and thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Ooh, man. Yeah, Justin Cruz. I'm a little bit taken back by that. I talked about that a little bit earlier in this stream, how, when they finally had that meeting in the backyard here about how Saul was saying, he was basically saying one call and I can turn you in. And he said it's not about the reward money. It's about being in the game. But, it's that reward poster was for $5 million. And like I said, they stole maybe what? Like tops, a couple tens of thousands of dollars, maybe 20 grand worth of merchandise, maybe. So, and of course, they have to go through the work of reselling it and being, caught with all this illegal merchandise. So maybe criminals sort of have that sort of mindset. Again, it's not about the money, it's about the thrill of it all. That's what they were sort of alluding to here in this scene. At Trish D, thank you so much for the super chat. He misses himself and his life. He can't stop being Jimmy/Saul. It's who he is. I don't know what that word is. Though for a second, he was gonna put that red jacket at the end. Yeah, I mean they didn't put any color in that episode for sure. I was hoping that we'd maybe see the sort of red jacket there in color, but the whole episode was in black and white. So yeah, I mean that was kind of the main premise here. It was very refreshing in many respects to see Gene Takovic embrace that Saul Goodman persona again. I mean it's truly the persona which he loved the most. I mean, we have to remember back in the plot of Breaking Bad that this was a man who loved to be over bus benches and billboards all over Albuquerque and loved being on late night television commercials. He loved being Saul Goodman. I mean, he probably thinks back to that just unbelievable house he had when he was Saul Goodman as well, with his unbelievable collection of vibrant, colorful clothes, which was kind of a callback at the very end of this episode. But absolutely, he missed being Saul. Absolutely, that's true. And when they showed that teaser photo to tease, I guess, or promote season 6 of Better Call Saul, he was absolutely putting that red jacket on, at least metaphorically speaking, and was not taking it off. So perspective is everything, and you make some great points there for sure. And really appreciate the super chat at Trish D. Thank you so much for the support. Ooh, at Coach Beer, thank you so much for the super chat. The Jeff teaser they released during the break, do we think at least some of the voice is Jesse's like we speculated, maybe when he meets Saul? Yeah, I mean, I definitely know what you're talking about, that teaser where I believe it sounded like Jeff saying, I just want you to admit it. It definitely sounded like it was a reshooting of the original scene with the original OG Jeff actor's voice, where he's saying, I just want you to admit it, say it. And that very last say it, I agree. It definitely sounds like Jesse Pinkman as Coach Beer. Thank you so much for the super chat. I like that number. I see what you did there. Really appreciate it. Episode 610. But yeah, I mean, I know the sort of rumor that went around with the trailer. I've talked about it, how a lot of people thought Walter White's voice was in that trailer, but it was absolutely not true. It was only Mike Ehrmantraut's voice. But I've listened to that teaser, the midseason break teaser, and that definitely sounds like Jesse Pinkman's voice for sure. So again, it's likely that Jesse will meet Saul. Maybe it's somewhat to do with his a relationship with Amelia, which I've talked about in a previous video. But yeah, I definitely think that sounds just like Jesse Pinkman's voice. That's for damn sure, Coach Beer. Again, little taken aback. I wasn't expecting this episode for sure. Like I said, a very reputable newspaper, the Albuquerque Journal, reported that they were going to appear in this episode. So, I mean, say what you will about mainstream newspapers and, saying, oh, well, their gospel, they're correct. I mean, the reporting was absolutely wrong for this, but I mean, everyone makes mistakes. It's been known to happen, but yeah, really appreciate the super chat, Coach Beer. And yeah, it does sound like Jesse Pinkman's voice. And again, you would imagine we're going back to the Breaking Bad timeline, I guess, after this episode, Coach Beer. So a lot to think about for sure. And thank you again so much for the support. Really appreciate it. At Fat at Fat Swiss and T, thank you so much for the super chat. It's a 5 million reward versus Walt's 80 million plus operation that Saul practically managed. Jeff thought he could easily double the 5 million, but was just being played. Interesting. Interesting. That's interesting, to tell you the truth. I never thought about that, about whether or not he thought sort of Saul would sort of give him a way to make millions of dollars. I actually didn't consider that. That's a great point, Fat Swiss and D. He definitely got played in the end. He definitely traded a legal $5 million reward for maybe like 20 grand worth of like, high-end designer clothes. But yeah, I never thought about that, about how he thought it would be much more. And yeah, that's an interesting point for sure, in respect to him thinking that he and Saul would be able to just sort of do this sort of scam and maybe make hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, maybe. So yeah, it's actually an interesting perspective. We don't know sort of where his head was at. He definitely sort of had, again, in that sort of scene where they're preparing and sort of doing a mock plan in this big sort of valley of snow. That's a sort of another sort of aspect of all this, when he was having second doubts about maybe doing the plan. But yeah, that's actually a really interesting perspective. Nick Russ, thank you for the super chat. I'll get to that for sure. But yeah, that's I never thought about that, where maybe he was just so, again, I really thought that Jeff the cab driver was going to be a much more sort of worthy adversary of Saul, but he definitely wasn't. So that is food for thought there for sure. And I still sort of wonder why they sort of sent that, made that teaser with him ripping down that corkboard flyer with the $5 million reward where it appeared he was in Albuquerque. So food for thought for sure at Fat Swiss and Tea. And thank you so much for the super chat. At Nick Russ, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Really appreciate it. I was on the edge of my seat during that theft scene. I was as well. My heart was pumping during that scene when he slipped on the slick floor there. And Jimmy once again bounces back to that antisocial behavior like a rubber band. I guess Chuck really was right, even after all these years. Again, I'm no psychologist for sure, so you said bounces back once again. So you're basically saying right after he was able to sort of feign tears, he was able to sort of, again, I'm not too familiar, again, I'm no psychologist for sure, so you said, I was definitely on the edge of my seat for that theft scene, and Jimmy once again bounces back like that, to that antisocial behavior like a rubber band. Are you saying after the heist scene where they got away from it, so right after he feigned those tears, Nick Russ, he sort of was able to just revert back to his original antisocial behavior? Again, I'm sorry. I definitely agree that Chuck was right about his brother, about how you're slipping Jimmy, and when this is not a game. When you mess with the law, people get hurt. I absolutely agree with that. I was absolutely on the edge of my seat. I'm sorry. I can't speak to the antisocial behavior point. I mean, maybe you could clarify it a little bit more. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not actually too familiar with the definition of antisocial behavior. So I'd be happy to sort of speak on that if you could maybe clarify it a little bit, Nick Russ. But thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah, my heart was racing for that one. I was wondering what was going to go down there. So at Tanner R, thank you so much for the super chat. Jeff's mom stated he was involved with the wrong crowd in Albuquerque. Wonder what that will lead to. The Walton Jesse red herring game this season is over the top. Yeah, like I'll answer it sort of backwards again. Albuquerque Journal reported it. It's a big, very reputable. I think it's the biggest newspaper in New Mexico. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it's definitely, I think it's one of the biggest newspapers in Albuquerque. So yeah, another total red herring, a total, misreporting of when Walton Jesse were supposed to appear. By a very mainstream, reputable publication. And yeah, sort of very interesting dialogue at the end of this episode where he said that Jeff was ran with a wrong crowd in Albuquerque. It makes a lot of sense just based on what we saw in this episode at Tanner R. And you wonder if we could maybe see Jeff in the Breaking Bad timeline, in the sort of present day Breaking Bad timeline after Saul Goodman walked into his office at the end of the previous episode of Fun and Games. So yeah, again, oh man, I would be so up for that if it was the OG Jeff, but part of me just wants to just pretend like this never happened and just sort of move on and sort of say, okay, they wrapped up the Jeff storyline. It is what it is now. Gene's sort of out of it, but at the end, I mean, it's still, I mean, it sort of wraps up the sort of threat of Gene Tanner R. This episode here, but again, it doesn't sort of display to us the sort of final continuation of Gene's storyline. And if you listen to that Vanity Fair interview with Ray Seahorn and Bob Odenkirk, it definitely sounded to me like we have not seen the last of Jimmy and Kim, that's for sure. So you wonder if the Gene timeline will play into that. So that is a good question. But yeah, I mean, when you said he ran with the wrong crowd in Albuquerque, I did wonder if if he would maybe appear in the Breaking Bad timeline. But with the recast, I have mixed opinions. But thank you so much, Tanner R. Really appreciate it. So Nick Russ, thank you again for the super chat. I meant that him setting up the whole store scheme as the whole was. I meant him setting up the whole store scheme as a whole. He was him going back to his old antisocial behavior from his Saul days. Okay, so you're saying him acting like Saul Goodman is antisocial behavior. Okay, I see what you're saying there. Okay, thank you so much, Nick Russ. I see what you're saying there. So he was able just to revert back to that Saul Goodman persona, which you're saying is the epitome of someone who exhibits antisocial behavior. Okay, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, I mean, I can agree. Again, I don't exactly know the definition of that. I'll take your word for it. I'm not too well versed in the sort of psychology, like human psychology and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think he reveled in Nick Russ. I think he absolutely reveled in reverting back to his old Saul Goodman ways. I think it was the sort of highlight of his life. To quote Walter White, I think he felt the same way. He was alive. He was good at it. It was kind of funny. We didn't get Walter White in this episode, but we did get a Walter White reference. He did mention to Jeff and his sort of sidekick here, they were kind of akin to the sticky bandits, like I talked about, not the smartest criminals, but he did mention how, it's crazy, a 50-year-old high school chemistry teacher walking into my office who can't afford his bills, and then, a couple of years later, he has a stack of cash the size of Volkswagen. So, yeah, I absolutely, sort of going back to your last message here at Nick Russ. If I can try to find it, but what you said about how he was able to, I was on the edge of my seat, and Jimmy once again bounces back. Yep, absolutely. It was very seamless, like a rubber band. I agree. I see what you're saying there, Nick Russ, and I really appreciate the support. I see exactly what you're saying, Nick Russ. It was very seamless. It goes back to season 1 of Better Call Saul in the episode entitled Uno, where during his free time he reveled in watching his old Saul Goodman commercials. It was the only little bit of light or color, that was reflecting into his life. Was reminding himself of that previous time of his life in the when he was Saul Goodman. So I agree completely, Nick Russ. It was like a rubber band. I agree. Yeah, at Clay, Real Rider, I definitely don't think this is the last of the Gene story. Absolutely not. Like I said, it sort of tied a bow on the threat of Jeff the cab driver, but it definitely didn't conclude the Gene storyline. That's for sure. At Clay, Real Rider, I'd say so for sure. Ooh, I had to relax and sleep. That is funny. So yeah, at Trish D, IMDb. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh here, but in respect to having accurate cast members who are going to appear in an upcoming episode, is pretty worthless at Trish D. Unbelievably unreliable. Back-to-back adverbs there, I think so. Yeah, Matt Duncan. I mean, that's something there. I do wonder what the public's opinion of this episode will be. Again, very, very mixed emotions. I mean, I was waiting so long to finally see the Gene storyline return into season 6 of Better Call Saul. We saw the first 7 episodes, unbelievable story writing, unbelievable mid-season finale. Really enjoyed all of this. We had to wait for the mid-season break, and again, just very. I think this episode is going to be very polarizing. That's for sure. I think it's going to be a very polarizing episode. I just feel like, again, it's again, for at least from what I see from the chat, it's very polarizing. That's for sure. Some people are really liking it. Some people are sort of not the biggest fans. But it's yeah. I mean, again, it's a sort of, I don't know. Maybe my expectations were. I mean, to the people who let me just speak to the people who weren't the biggest fan of this episode, who were making their voices heard in the chat, and I totally understand that opinion. But yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe we just waited for Gene's return for so long. We haven't seen him since all the way back in season 5 of Better Call Saul. There was just so much hype and so much expectation for this episode that, I don't know. Again, I don't know, maybe speaking for myself, and I don't know if people sort of feel the same way, but I really thought Jeff the cab driver would just be a much more sort of worthy adversary, and I just really feel like that. Him sort of appearing like a Marv from Home Alone, and compounded by the unfortunate, unfortunate, but it happens in life, necessary recast. I think that's sort of was a little bit of I was a little bit taken aback by that. I mean, again, I'll have to rewatch the this episode for sure, and again have another perspective on it after just the first watch. But it's it's interesting, It's again, it's yeah, at JMNS. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Marv. He really did. This recast of Jeff, it really reminded me of Marv from the Sticky Bandits. I mean, that slip and fall. I mean, didn't Marv absolutely? I mean, they slipped and fell on those toy cars in that movie, so it was kind of akin to that for sure. So man, I see it's definitely polarizing. I see people either saying they loved it, and some people saying, it's the my goodness, Pierre Aguilera worse than Fly. That is something right there. So again, I did like a lot of aspects of this episode, but it was just so hard. It was so hard to sort of be fully immersed in it with the recasting of Jeff the Cab Driver. So at Nick Marizano, it was okay. That seems like a very logical somewhere in the middle, sort of a middle ground in this episode. So yeah, at Relax and Sleep, I agree. It's the Fly episode. I think it definitely maybe at first watch to a lot of people it wasn't the best, but in hindsight I really enjoyed Fly. But again, that is a discussion for a different video. So again, and enjoy. I mean, it's like every episode is different. You have to appreciate every sort of episode for what it is. Not every episode is going to be the sort of train heist episode in Dead Freight. I mean, there has to be character development over the course of this series. It just has to be. It can't be just sort of a non-stop action movie akin to Mission Impossible, which is amazing. I mean, there's always these unbelievable scenes happening back to back to back, but with a story like this, there has to be lots of sort of character development and setup, and maybe that can cause some stagnation for some people watching the show, but it is what it is. So, yeah, at Raymond Levy, I talked about that. I talked about that a little bit earlier in respect to the Albuquerque Journal's reporting about how it was totally off base. I mean, the reputable newspaper, mainstream newspaper, not some crazy guy, not some just guy rambling into a camera on the internet like me. So, a lot of people took it as word, but yes, we were. The Albuquerque Journal reported it that they were going to appear in 610. Ad non nobis solum, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, non nobis solum. Thank you for the super chat. Ooh, so yeah, again, I'm very curious to see what the creators say about this one. I definitely want to listen to the Insider podcast for for this episode. I definitely want to see what the creators say. So, but yeah, sort of to get a little bit more into it here, we see sort of Gene offer, like I said, the cab driver to be in the game as opposed to just turning him in for the at Hannah. That is funny. that got me right there. Mukbang heavy episode. I see what you did there. That is funny, man. But to sort of get into it here, we then see Gene return home, sort of listen to the police blotter here, and again, I think it's sort of him just sort of being abundantly cautious, because he's always listening to see if someone turned him in, especially now that he got made. Maybe listening and wondering if, despite the fact that he made this deal with Jeff the cab driver, wondering if he's still going to turn him in nonetheless. But yeah, it's pretty sort of interesting here. And of course, the big sort of a capper in this scene is that he goes back into the shoebox, which contained the diamonds. But of course, he pulls out none other than the pinky ring that Marco gave to him after he passed away in the episode entitled Marco at the end of season 1 of Better Call Saul. So sort of definitely foreshadowing Jimmy turning back into Saul Goodman when he put this ring back on. So at Cody Madman, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I think this episode functions well as its own, but won't be fully appreciated until the end of the series because it could have some significance to the rest of the plot. No idea what if yet. Yeah, I mean that is a really good point. I think we don't know as of right now. You're right. This could tie into the final three episodes of the series. Um, I tend to agree. Like I said, just based on the chat that I've seen so far in this stream, it's very polarizing. A lot of people apparently weren't fans of it. Um, not just like, that's what I'm seeing, but a lot of people were. And so definitely very polarizing for sure. You're saying it won't be fully appreciated until the end of the series. But yeah, we'll see for sure. Again, we'll see how it sort of ties into all of this, and especially the sort of final conclusion to the Gene Takovic storyline. Maybe this episode will be much more appreciated, like you're saying, when we finally see the conclusion to the Gene Takovic storyline. That those are some great points you raised. Again, there was that one comment about how we heard Mary and Jeff's mom say that he ran with a bad crowd. Could he maybe appear in the Breaking Bad timeline? I wouldn't be opposed for that with the OG Jeff, but I don't know how I'd feel about that about the new Jeff as well. But yeah, I don't know. That's true. You say you have no idea what any significance it could reveal, but yeah, I don't know either. Again, I talked about it a little bit. If you watch that sort of variety video with Ray Seahorn and Bob Odenkirk, I would definitely. Again, I'm not a gambling man, but I think the odds are pretty good that Jimmy and Kim are reuniting in some capacity. Kind of saying that the premise of this story is going to be sort of well, I don't know about the premise, but one of the main premises of the story is going to be sort of Jimmy and Kim's relationship. So that's definitely seeming to come back into the fold here, and I definitely think we may see Gene we may see Kim, excuse me, in the Gene Takovic timeline. It's definitely worth the watch if you want some sort of pretty sort of cryptic. I wouldn't call them spoilers, but just almost spoilers, though. I would definitely recommend you go watch that Variety interview. It was pretty interesting there. Again, not all of it for sure, but there were some sort of very sort of cryptic things that Bob Odenkirk said about the remaining 4 episodes of this season. So, and again, thank you so much for the super chat at Cody Madman. So, at UD Reviews, stream with me and other YouTubers for the finale. I mean, if you mean after the episode, I mean, I guess it's potentially, again, I'm kind of thank you so much for the super chat at UD Reviews. If you're talking about after the finale, it could definitely be possible for sure. But to tell you the truth, if you mean like, we obviously can't be during, but yeah, I mean it's definitely possible. I mean I have to look at my schedule. I mean my real life is actually getting pretty crazy right now, unfortunately, and something's got to give in respect to these next few weeks, and also making content for Better Call Saul. But yeah, I'm definitely open to it. I mean I don't think I've collaborated with anyone as of yet, but yeah, I'm definitely open to the idea. UD Reviews. And thank you so much for the super chat. So, ooh man, but yeah, the sort of, again, we then see the sort of scheme get set up here in respect to we then see in sort of, again, it was technically the next act, but at the same time it sort of all bled one into another. But yeah, so again, we see sort of Jimmy here going to the security guards here to sort of ingratiate himself with these guys, and sort of, again, give them Cinnabons, again, for a currently unknown reason at the time. But interestingly, again, I'll have to go back and watch. I'm not sure if this is the exact same actor who portrayed the security guard in season 3 of Better Call Saul in the episode entitled, what was it, off the top of my head, season 3 of Better Call Saul. In the what was the name of the season 3 premiere? It was Mabel. That's right. It was Mabel. So in the season 3 premiere of Mabel, when we see Saul say, "Get a lawyer," don't say anything, get a lawyer. He was definitely meant to be one of the security guards who confronted Gene there and asked him who the shoplifter was. But again, I don't know if it was the exact same actor, but again, that's sort of neither here nor there. But we then sort of finally see that Gene is offering to give these security guards Cinnabons, because they were the ones who called the EMTs after he had his medical episode where he sort of passed out of dehydration, which was the sort of literary vessel here. But then we sort of see the sort of scheme get set up here, where he's giving this a security guard here, played none other than by Jim O'Hare from Parks and Rec, Larry, Jerry, Gary, if you're a fan of that show. So, but anyway, yeah, he plays the part perfectly. I understand why he was sort of cast here. He plays this sort of absolutely down-to-earth Midwestern character here. He's this absolutely sort of a little bit naive but optimistic security guard who is very sort of ripe for manipulation by Gene, aka back to Saul Goodman here. So I thought the casting, I mean, this part, I think the casting was actually pretty perfect here in respect to, yeah, Justin Cruz. He did like a Cinnabon, so. But yeah, absolutely just spot on sort of casting here in respect to this character. But we're now learning that initially Gene is trying to ingratiate himself here with the security guards. And of course, we learn that when, again, I'm missing the name of the security guard. I don't know if it was revealed to us in this yeah, it probably was, but I'm missing it off the top of my head. I don't remember if anyone remembered what Jim O'Hare's the character's name was. But anyway, we see him sort of engaging in conversation here, and we learn that every single night the other security guard has to sort of make the rounds. So it's just going to be Jim and this main security guard here who has to watch the monitors. And was it Jerry, Nick Marizano, or are you just pulling a Parks and Rec joke there? It wasn't actually Jerry, does it? Was it? That would be hilarious if they named him Jerry. But anyway, sort of getting into it here, we learn that, again, it's sort of the main premise of the scam where we learn that Gene is sort of just engaging in casual conversation with this guy. His name was Frank. Was it Frank or was it, again, people were saying Jerry, so that was definitely his name in Parks and Rec. So at Mill M, thank you so much for the super chat. It was weird. It is weird. Gene's story started now. Are they coming back to Breaking Bad era? To be honest, it was naive to rely on the second security guy not watching the cameras. So again, I tend to agree that it was sort of a very again, it was I'm surprised to say the least in respect to how 610 just happened to be a full Better Call Saul episode when it was definitely reported to be otherwise. Are they coming back to the Breaking Bad era? I would imagine so. You would think so. I mean, Walt and Jesse are allegedly going to appear and have a very big role, according to even Bob Odenkirk and Ray Seahorn in that Variety interview, how they're going to be in multiple scenes, and we only have 3 episodes left. So I would imagine that we're in the Breaking Bad era in the present-day timeline. But like I said, to tell you the truth, I mean, before the season started, I mean, back, in season 5, when I was thinking about how the series would end, I did sort of have this sort of crazy idea how the very last scene of the series would just be sort of Saul walking to his office and sitting down, and just sort of, that ending sort of, the way Fun and Games ended, I almost envisioned that to maybe in a sort of alternate universe to be the ending of the series completely. But yeah, you'd imagine they're going to come back to the Breaking Bad era. And the last sort of comment you make here, to be honest, it was naive to rely on the second security guy not watching the cameras. Who are you saying it was naive? Was it naive of Gene or was it naive of the main security guard? I'm sorry, I'm not really sure who was being naive. I mean, it was definitely. I mean, I'm not really sure what you're getting at there in that last part of the of your sort of the last part of your statement there. I mean, I really appreciate the super chat for sure, but if you could maybe clarify who was being naive, because I mean, I think that Saul absolutely sort of planned this out very, what is it, scrupulously? Is that a word? I'm not so sure, but he was very sort of diligent in his planning at Mill M. So he's talking about Gene. Yeah, at Mill M. I mean, I don't know who. It was naive to rely on the second security guy not watching the cameras. Are you saying naive in the writing, or are you saying naive of Gene's character? Yeah, sorry, I'm not actually sure. I wasn't naive. Are you saying that the writers were kind of like naive, or are you saying that I'm not sure who was being naive? I'm sorry, I wasn't exactly clear on that last part of Mill M. If you clarified that, I'd be happy to answer it. So. At Trish D, thank you so much for the super chat. In 501, he changed his license plate to Missouri. Year is 2012. I thought he was going back to Albuquerque tonight. At Kate Valentine, thank you so much for the super chat. I'll get to that, of course. But so yeah, I mean, he definitely changed his license plate again when he was sort of driving away after he thought he was made. And again, going back to 501, he drove out to that diner. He was listening to the sort of the police blotter. He was just waiting to see if Jeff, the cab driver, had turned him into the police. Sort of calling his employees, saying if anyone asked about him. I do remember that in 501. I thought he was going back to Albuquerque tonight. I mean, yeah, I mean, same. I mean, based on that teaser, you definitely thought that Albuquerque would have something to do with the Gene Takovic timeline, but so far, not yet. I mean, I definitely don't think this is going to be the last of Gene for sure. It was a little bit of a surreal episode, just how we got the very first an entire Gene Takovic episode when we've only seen one scene to start every single season so far at Trish D. But yeah, I definitely thought he would, again, I don't know if I thought he'd go back to Albuquerque tonight per se, but this is definitely not what I expected when, I was concocting a theoretical Gene episode inside of my head. And maybe that was the intention by the creators. I don't know. Again, I'll have to listen to the Insider podcast at Trish D. But yeah, I do remember the sort of license plate there. And again, 2012 would be the expiration date, I suppose. Again, I don't know the sort of the state laws about how long the expiration tags are good for. But actually, I was going to get right into the scene about the date for sure. But that's actually very, very serendipitous. I am going to get to the sort of date of this episode. But again, thank you so much for the super chat, Trish D. I really appreciate it. Kate Valentine, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Really enjoyed this. Gene finally came out of his boredom and depression and became Saul again. That's a spot-on assessment. Absolutely, Kate Valentine. He clearly was dead inside. I mean, just watching him go through the motions in Omaha, Nebraska, prior to him reassuming his Saul Goodman identity in this episode. You're spot on. He, that metaphor of the very first scene we ever saw of Gene Takovic, of him watching the Saul Goodman commercials and the color being reflected onto his glasses, just an absolute metaphor in like when color was in his life. And I mean, there's a reason why it's shot in black and white. I mean, all of the color, all of the sort of the vibrance and the just being full of life is just totally stripped from Gene Takovic. But it's actually funny. I did think they were going to incorporate a little bit of color into this episode to sort of display to us that Saul was becoming Gene again. But again, to sort of get at the very end of this episode about whether or not Saul was going to sort of, buy that shirt, but then he left it there. Again, I think that was a very metaphorical as well to sort of the conclusion of Gene Takovic's storyline, maybe sort of foreshadowing that as well. So I'm definitely going to get to that for sure at the end of this episode at Kate Valentine. But thank you so much for the super chat. I spot on with that assessment for sure. But yeah, to sort of get into it here again, we learned that he's just timing the security guard to see how long his back is turned to the monitors, because in the end, again, not to sort of, get by the step-by-step process, but the scam here is that the security guard has his back turned for about 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and this is sort of the window where the guys can rob the store and get out undetected. But actually, very interesting scene here in respect to the dialogue, where we can hear the security guard here talking with Gene about Nebraska football, and my sort of ears immediately poked up when he said Martinez, because I do remember I saw there was that sort of very famous run that a quarterback Martinez had in a big, I think it was the Big Ten championship game, and that's neither here nor there. But actually, they were apparently very accurate in their dialogue for sure, because we remember him saying that I thought this was the year Texas wasn't even ranked, and next week is Oklahoma State. And actually, if we look here at the 2010 Nebraska Cornhuskers football team schedule, we see here that they were undefeated until they played unranked Texas and lost, and then the next week they played Oklahoma State. So actually very interesting here, where we learn that apparently, based on the dialogue of this episode, if we take it sort of literally based on what happened in real life, this episode apparently takes place in 2010, which is pretty interesting, because I guess this is October of 2010, apparently, because they were talking about how they lost to Texas. And of course, Walter White died on his 50th birthday in 2010, which would have been September. So this is apparently 1 month after Walter White died is when this is occurring. Again, I don't know if this was the intention by the creators, but it definitely came across this way. So this really sort of made me think here. I'm like, this all happened a month after Walter White's death. This was Gene being there for only a month. So again, I'm not actually sure what was going on here. I don't know if they did this on purpose, where they literally looked at the 2010 Nebraska Huskers sort of football schedule, where the quarterback's name was Martinez, who I believe was playing, if I'm not mistaken. We sort of look at the roster here. I can't believe I'm going into Nebraska football roster, but yeah, Taylor Martinez was the quarterback of Nebraska football, and they played Texas, and they played Oklahoma State the next week, as this dialogue said. So, yeah, this takes place a month after Walter White's death. So, kind of interesting here. You thought that, again, you always wondered what year the Gene Takovic timeline took place, and apparently it's right after Breaking Bad ended. So, this was a little bit of a surprise here, if my math serves me correctly. Yeah, Trish D, again, that's a good point there. You said the tag again. Maybe that could be the expiration date. Maybe do tags last for 2 years? Isn't that the expiration date? So if you got your tags renewed in 2010, then maybe they could expire in 2012. Again, I don't know. Again, the timeline has been very sort of interesting here. We really don't know what year it is, but yeah, I was surprised by that. If we go by the dialogue in this scene, it's apparently October of 2010 when this scam is happening. But again, the scam apparently took a couple weeks because it definitely seemed as though he was coming back every single week to sort of talk about Nebraska football. So at Sam Fisher, it's 2010 for sure. Yeah, that's what I got. So that's what I thought. At least based, I couldn't believe it. I had to double check. I'm like, are they? Is this really like? Did they really look at the actual sort of Nebraska football schedule and to write out this dialogue? So I was really taken aback by that. So yeah, we see the sort of setup here, and that's basically the premise here of the plan, where they go, but he goes back every week and talks about Nebraska football to sort of ingratiate himself, and of course the relationship builds between him and the security guards, going to the store to sort of see where all the expensive items are, and sort of counting the steps and all of that. Of course, planning and going over the plan again and again and again. And then really interesting scene here when after Saul sort of setting up the basis of the plan, we then see them out in this big sort of field here, where we now see what the basis of the teaser was, where we see that Saul was basically sort of using the bullhorn as sort of motivation for Jeff the cab driver here. But yeah, again, really sort of just another exemplification of Jeff's personality not being what I thought it was. He was sort of very sort of on the fence about even doing this plan. And his sidekick was maybe going to do it. But again, he sort of, again, I'll have to go back and listen to the dialogue again. I've only listened to it once. So the actual sort of dialogue and motivation for what Saul specifically said to sort of get Jeff to say, all right, I'll do the plan. I'll be in the game. I'll do this. But again, so sort of weird to watch this scene with a different character. I mean, really was expecting again, I'm just very taken aback by the personality of Jeff being just completely different from what I thought it would be when we first saw him back in 501 for Magic Man. So at Trish D, that's interesting. If it's only been a month, maybe that's what helps him when he comes out of hiding, especially if he says he was in hiding from Waltz, not the law. Yeah, again the when this episode takes place, again the timeline's very important for sure, just based on the appearance of all the characters. At least if we go in respect to the continuity of everything. But at Full Hay 1, why would he name a dog Nippy? Well, I mean, isn't that what dogs do? Little dogs are kind of like, they bite you, nippy dogs. Is that what they were going for at Full Hay? That's at least that's what I thought. So, will Marion be wife number 4 at Steve Bob JD? That is funny, man. Again, I don't know if Gene actually feels that way. He definitely was putting on an act for her. Definitely sort of making her be attracted to someone who he truly wasn't at Steve Bob JD. But that's funny. I see what you did there. That's funny. Ooh, at Dylan 2 times. Thank you so much for the super chat, man. Really appreciate it, bro. Think about it. Yes, Walt died on his birthday in 2020, but maybe he was gone for a while between Ozymandias and Granite State, so Gene has been in Omaha for about a year. Ozymandias ends in nearly mid. That is a great point. That is a great point. Again, I don't know if it was a year. Wasn't it? Was it maybe 6 months? Maybe like Dylan 2 times. That is an unbelievable point. That is a great point. I didn't even really consider that, to tell you the truth. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I completely forgot about that. So in Granite State, when Saul leaves via Ed to disappear, you're right. That definitely was in 2010, because if we go back to the episode of American Greed, that was sort of that fake episode that was released as sort of a promo. They definitely said, I think, that the DEA raided Saul Goodman's office in 2010. So yeah, this he definitely has been on the run for, it's not like a month, you're right, it's not like, he sort of left on Walter White's birthday, you're absolutely right, but at the same time he definitely doesn't appear to have been in Omaha for many years. He definitely appears to only have been here for a couple of months at Dylan Two Times. You were spot on there with that point. Thank you so much for reminding me of that. Actually, that's a great point. So yeah, I'd have to go again. The timeline is very sort of iffy here, but yeah, it was a couple of months. It was maybe like, again, it's there's no official, there's like an unofficial official timeline floating out there at Dylan Two Times. So yeah, he was probably on the run for about 3-4 months, something like that. Maybe around 6 months tops. But yeah, it definitely seems like we're in 2010. That's a great point. Dylan Two Times, and just based on, of course, the Nebraska football dialogue that was literally taken verbatim from what happened in real life. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So really great point there. And as Trish D said about the 2012 license plate that he put on, the fake sort of plate when he was skipping town when he was made in 501. Yeah, I don't know what the laws are in Nebraska. Maybe tags are good for 2 years. So yeah, for sure. That's a great point, Dylan Two Times. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I really appreciate that one. Big assist on that. I appreciate it, man. Trish D, Dylan Two Times. Breaking Bad Wiki only has the time span between Granite State and Felina as 6 months. He left Granite State. I'm confused. So yeah, I think that makes sense, Trish D. I think because Walter White's birthday, he died on his birthday, but Ozymandias happened in 2010 after his 51st birthday. So yeah, it definitely appears to be 2010 right now based on the dialogue. But yeah, he definitely left maybe again. So yeah, it makes sense to me because if it's October of 2010 now, then so what? So again, off the top of my head, if Ozymandias happened in what, March, so April, May, June, July, August, September, so something like that, yeah. So if Ozymandias happened in like March or April, yeah, that makes sense because right after that is basically when shit hit the fan, and that's when Saul left. And of course, Saul was in hiding in Omaha, Walt was in hiding in New Hampshire, and he was biding his time, doing his thing at Cinnabon for 5-6 months, and this everything went down in October of 2010, apparently. So that is an interesting point, Trish D and at Dylan Two Times. So again, I always wondered what year the Gene timeline took place. Was it like 2012, 2013? But no, I guess it's pretty close to everything. And yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that maybe Gene was reading on the news about Walter White's death a month before this whole thing went down. So at Cat D, too much snow for October. Again, I'll have to go. But I mean, I don't know. It definitely snows a lot in the Midwest. That's for sure. I mean, it definitely snows for sure. I mean, I've been in the Midwest before in April and it snowed. So again, I see what you did there. I'd have to go back and look. I guess we could look at the historical weather too if we really want to be nitpicky here. But I mean, come on. At the end of the day, the actor was completely different. So at Jinx, that's me. What was your theory for Jeff back in season 5? I touched on that a little bit earlier in the stream. At Jinx, that's me. I definitely, like I said, I thought he would be a more sort of a worthy adversary. I thought he'd be much more intelligent of an adversary and not the sort of, he came across as sort of a dumb criminal who Saul was able to manipulate very easily. So that was sort of my original theory after 501. I thought it would be a little bit more adversarial than just very sort of Saul sort of very much dominating him in this episode, metaphorically speaking. So yeah, David Wartsky again. We could nitpick all day long and sort of the styles and things like that. If I'm not mistaken, in the episode entitled "Live Free or Die" when Walt's at the Denny's, I think it's shot in 2012, I think, but I think it's shot in 2012, but the scene takes place in 2010. And if you look very closely, the Denny's placemat that they used for filming, I think it says 2012 on it. So again, I mean, with these prop things, I mean, it is what it is. I know a lot of people have pointed out, oh, the model's not correct and things like that, but I see what you're getting at there. But I think for all intents and purposes, I think it's supposed to be 2010 just based on the way this scene was written. So yeah, just to sort of progress through this episode here, we see the plan where new Jeff is sort of stored in this crate. We see Saul sort of manipulating the floor manager here in order to get the crate to stay, where he sort of it's under the ruse of it just being delivered to the wrong place. We then, of course, see after him sort of schmoozing the manager and saying that he'll pick it up the next morning. Sort of, after going back and forth here about her not wanting it there, but of course with him sort of winning her over and saying, we both got bosses that we have to answer to. Then, of course, we see Jeff the cab driver emerge from the crates, and we then, of course, see this scene here with Saul, and they're going about the plan, and everything seems to be going very swimmingly. Of course, Saul has probably ran through the plan in his head again and again and again. They went through the motions here in the big sort of open field with all the snow. Again, they planned again and again and again. But of course, as again, I think I've talked about this before. Again, I don't know if it's the analogy of war is the best, but as the sort of military historian von Clausewitz said, when you're preparing for battle, there's always that friction, the things in the battlefield that can't be anticipated when planning the war on the board. And of course, I guess Saul and Jeff the cab driver totally overlooked the sort of piece of the dialogue where the floor manager says have the crew sort of buff the floor and make it all slippery, and then of course Jeff the cab driver slips on the floor and I guess is totally knocked out, I would imagine. I think he probably hit his head or something to that effect. Hey, what's up, Courtney Reviews? What is up? Well, great to see you again. Glad you're back in the chat again after last night. How's it going? But yeah, again, I don't know if the analogy here is the best, but again, it sort of reminded me a little bit. It's sort of the common trope, like how you can't prepare for everything in the on the battlefield, and despite the fact that Walton, Jesse, and Todd, and Mike, and Kubi probably went over that train heist again and again and again, they knew it like the back of their hand. They couldn't prepare for the innocent bystander, Drew Sharp, driving by on his motorcycle, and they in a million years couldn't have planned for that contingency. Maybe Saul could have planned for the contingency here of the slippery floor, but again, that was quite the scene here. And as people were as I talked a little bit earlier in the chat, my heart was pumping here when when Jeff sort of hit the deck here, and Saul's just reaction to it when he saw that if the security guard turned around, their plan would be totally shot. So quite the funny scene here for sure when we saw Jeff the cab driver slip on the floor. And again, we saw Jimmy again, master manipulator here again, sort of reverting back to his sort of just ability to manipulate. We see him sort of almost using the security guard. Again, name sort of escapes me here. I apologize. As a therapist, talking about how my family is dead, my brother is dead, I have no one, no wife, no kids. If I died tomorrow, no one would care. The Cinnabon would just replace me with someone new. And, I guess it's all true, but I don't know if he's using this to sort of manipulate the sort of security guard here into not turning around. And again, in the end, the plan sort of works here. They sort of get away with it at the 11th hour. Sort of Jeff regains consciousness, I suppose, and puts all the goods back in the crate, and then apparently hides in the bathroom all night and until the next morning. So. And yeah, and at Courtney Reviews, I mean, I think even you mentioned it too about the $5 million reward. I talked about this a little bit earlier in my stream, but again, I really just don't know where Jeff's head was at when theoretically he could turn him in for $5 million legitimately, but he decided to trade that for maybe $20,000 tops in stolen goods. I mean, maybe it wasn't about the money for Jeff the cab driver. It was about the rush, the thrill of it all. Just how like it wasn't really about the money for characters like Saul Goodman, to an extent. It wasn't all about the money. It was about more than just the money. That's probably a better way to put it. But yeah, so kind of was curious about where Jeff's head was at for sure here. But yeah, we see sort of Saul get away with it scot-free. Again, I thought the casting was just impeccable here with the sort of security guard played by Jim O'Hare. A great scene again. I could go on and on about the little nuances here about how, even that great line about how you felt like this before, right? He's like, well, me, nope, not personally, but I'm sure other people have, and it's totally fine. Again, just kind of funny here, just the sort of, I don't even know, the sort of, just the way he's sort of listening to a Gene here. I guess the sort of, the machismo of even sort of talking about your feelings. I think that's what sort of I was trying to get at here. But the machismo of not wanting to talk about your feelings. But yeah, so the plan works. Again, very sort of interesting scene here where we see sort of Gene sort of try to compose himself after all of that stress. I was kind of curious what was going to happen here afterwards. In respect to after they got away with the plan scot-free, I was kind of wondering what Gene's initial reaction was going to be. And then, of course, after this, we then see, like I said, Jeff, again, it just doesn't seem worth it to me. It really doesn't, like, was it worth it to maybe give yourself a concussion to stay all night in a bathroom for, like, a couple of, like, nice jackets, like, maybe tens of thousands of dollars of merchandise, which you would then, again, have to sell? I mean, it's kind of weird. Again, maybe it's, again, like Howard Hamlin said, like, it wasn't about the money. You did it for fun. You get off to it. Maybe Jeff the cab driver got off to it. I don't know. Definitely doesn't seem worth it to me in any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, when we see this scene here in the garage, when they are looking through all of the merchandise, again we learn that Saul completely flipped the table on them, where it's basically sort of a RICO case, and all of the sort of illegal things they did about renting things and traveling across state lines to commit these felonies, that's 10 years minimum or something to that effect, to go to jail. So if they ever turn Saul in, they're going down too. So this is Saul's, very literal maybe get out of jail free card, because they wouldn't turn him in here. Again, like I said, these criminals, I thought they were going to be much more like I said, worthy adversaries, but I talked about at the beginning of the stream, they really came across as the sticky bandits from Home Alone. It definitely seemed like Marv and Harry. It really kind of did. I don't know if that was the intention by the creators, but it kind of came across that way. Again, like was talked about again a little bit earlier in the stream about how Marion said that Jeff ran with a bad crowd, and of course Saul said, basically kind of what they said to the Kettlemans, how you forget the sort of the Cottonwood Mall, you forget that you ever met me, you forget Saul Goodman, you never see me again, sort of threatening the Kettlemans in the same way like he's threatening those guys. And we see the conversation here with Marion about how Jeff ran with a bad crowd. We sort of see the nice bow tied on the character, or at least on the dog Nippy. You wonder if this is sort of the end of Marion. I don't know. I don't know if this is the last of her character, if we're going to see more of her. At Nick Russ, Jeff went from a really intimidating guy to a goofy, silly Willy slipping and knocking himself out. LOL. Yeah, he really did. He really did, for sure. That was definitely my sort of first reaction to all of this. Like I said, I'm going to listen to the Insider podcast for sure. At Courtney Reviews, comic relief after the roller coaster of 7, 8, and 9. I agree. They could have done much more with Jeff, but it resolves that storyline. I was left wanting something more, at least a cliffhanger, ride that tension. Yeah, I agree. The cliffhanger wasn't what I thought it would be for sure. It wasn't much of a cliffhanger. At most, or at best, it definitely resolved the Jeff problem. And again, I do wonder if maybe they didn't have to recast the actor. Courtney Reviews, maybe they would have played it a little bit differently, but maybe they felt like they wrote themselves into a corner a little bit and they had to have a new actor. So maybe they decided to, okay, we have to resolve this Jeff issue, but, we have to do it with a different actor, so maybe we'll sort of change our original intention for this character. That's a great question. I don't know. But yeah, there was definitely some comic relief to it, I would say, but I don't know. I agree. When you say I was left wanting something more, that is an unbelievable assessment. I felt the exact same way. I don't know. Maybe my expectations were a little bit too high for this episode. Maybe they could have never been met, no matter what happened here. But yeah, I agree with that assessment completely. That's spot on right there, Courtney Reviews. Well said, as usual. At Agent Neptune, care to predict the next 3 episodes? Me neither. Yeah, I mean, in full honesty, at Agent Neptune, thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah, I really don't care to predict the next 3 episodes, that's for damn sure. Especially with all this, bad reporting out there where, like I said, reputable newspaper, Albuquerque Journal, totally wrong. They said Walt and Jesse were appearing again, but the thing, I was scratching my head in my live stream yesterday. They used IMDb as their official source. So again, that in hindsight, that was absolutely terrible. I could say, oh well, Price was going to come back this week because he was listed on IMDb. So yeah, that was some pretty shady reporting by the Albuquerque Journal. But like I said, can't get them all right. But yeah, in respect to the next 3 episodes, who knows? I mean, that teaser again, unbelievably cryptic. Saul, aka Gene, was talking to someone. It sounded like a woman's voice. I don't know who it was. I only listened to it once very quickly before the stream, so I'd have to go back and listen to it again. So yeah, definitely food for thought there for sure. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I would imagine we're going to go back to the Breaking Bad timeline at Agent Neptune, but at the same time, maybe we're going back to maybe the Gene story continues in the next episode. I have no idea. I still don't think we have episode titles yet for the final 3 episodes, but yeah, that is care to predict the next 3? Not really. Not after the way this is going. So ooh, thank you again, Neptune, for Agent Neptune for the super chat. Really, really appreciate the support, man. Thank you. At Justin Cruz, I mean, to sort of continue on that, what is next for Gene? I mean, based on that variety video I watched today, I would imagine I could maybe, if I was really gonna sort of take a sort of shot in the dark here, or not really, or a so educated guess. I mean, I just feel like the sort of reunion is happening. I feel like the Gene and Kim reunion is gonna happen in some capacity. Maybe not the way we think, but like I said, the Gene episode was going to happen. I think we all knew that, but I definitely didn't think this was going to happen. That's for damn sure. So, I mean, to sort of again, I'll have to listen to the Insider podcast in this episode. I'll have to see what the creators have to say about it. But again, if at the end of the day, if they kind of say, the Jeff recast completely sort of messed up our original intention, and we had to sort of get rid of this Jeff problem because it would have been a gaping plot hole, and we sort of changed Jeff characters in this sort of goofy, very dumb criminal, where Gene was able to outsmart him using his Saul Goodman wits. Maybe I could get behind that. I'm not too sure, but man, I don't know. I really wish we had the OG Jeff for damn sure. So, ooh, at EMK, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I think he's going to see Kim happy living a normal life with a husband, and he's going to turn himself in knowing he could have made the same choices. Interesting. Again, yeah, I definitely wonder what's going to happen there. I don't know if Kim's going to be saving herself for Gene Takovic. That's for damn sure. I mean, Saul wasn't saving himself for Kim or anything like that. But yeah, you wonder in many respects. I mean, maybe Kim tries to live her life the best she can. After what she did with Howard Hamlin is actually kind of interesting. I think Ray Seahorn kind of described Kim Wexler's character in that Variety video, sort of, again, not really a spoiler, but just her interpretation of her. Again, I think Bob Odenkirk kind of agreed as sort of manic, where she was sort of a person who wanted to do all these good deeds and help all of these people via her pro bono work to sort of make up for all of the bad things she did in her life. The sort of all of the bad things were offset by all the good things. All of the scheming and the manipulating was offset by the PD work, the public defender work. So yeah, you wonder after the sort of everything that happened with Howard Hamlin, if Kim was going to continue her life, I imagine she would do something trying to be very noble and virtuous, and trying to help the less fortunate and stuff like that. I could see that. Compared to Saul's reaction, or at least Gene's reaction to all of that, I don't really know. And again, there's that scene too of Kim smoking that cigarette outside of the law offices of Saul Goodman and Associates. So again, I'm assuming it's going to happen in the Gene timeline, the reunion, but maybe it happens in the Saul timeline. I don't really know. So yeah, I mean, after this episode, again, like I said, it's really sort of pretty futile to try to predict what's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, I think a reunion is going to happen between the characters like you're alluding to at EMK, but I don't think it's going to be a very like traditional sort of Disney movie fairy tale happy ending. I think it will be pretty nebulous in my opinion. So again, something to look forward to for sure at EMK. And yeah, again, is she living a normal life with another husband? It's possible. I could see it. Saul was sort of doing his thing with his casual relationships with many different women. So yeah, just sort of all food for thought there. And the reunion is going to happen just based on everything I've seen. At least what I'm reading into it, at least what Bob Odenkirk and Ray Seahorn said in that Variety interview. But we'll see for sure. So, and thank you again, EMK, so much for the super chat again. Really appreciate it. Yeah, at Dylan 2 times. IMDb lost my trust. But yeah, to sort of get into the very final scene here after sort of Gene says goodbye to Marion. Kind of funny scene here where he said he never went to Albuquerque and sort of tying a nice bow on the sort of Nippy storyline as I talked about. We then see Gene returning back to his normal life, working at Cinnabon, just sort of getting back into the swing of it. He's almost so immersed in his work that his coworker said, "Gee, like sort of, Gene, are you going to take your lunch break?" That's kind of an interesting scene. And then, of course, we see him go to this department store here where we see him sort of go to the scene of the crime, sort of look over this sort of, paisley sort of shirt and tie combination, something even more outrageous than Saul Goodman would wear, to tell you the truth. But, we see him looking at it, seeing if he's going to try it on. But at the end of the day, he decides to put it back on the rack and he walks away, thus pretty much ending this episode right here. Ooh, so yeah, like Courtney Reviews was kind of alluding to here, I was kind of hoping for like a little bit bigger of a cliffhanger, I'm sure, just by definition. But yeah, at the same time, I think this is pretty symbolic here, where maybe after Gene sort of enacting this entire plot here in this episode, he sort of longed for this sort of Saul Goodman life. He sort of, recalled back to when he used to wear suits and ties like this. But at the end of the day, he sort of, I think, maybe just reminded himself of his true situation about how he can't be this flamboyant, outgoing person. He's a wanted person. If he ever is discovered for his true identity, he's going to prison. So again, it was sort of just a sort of, again, kind of like what the song Wine and Roses sort of alluded to, just the passing breeze of memories. To tell you the truth. And while, of course, this was the greatest time in Saul Goodman's life, bar none, he got to sort of embrace this lifestyle once again to sort of what's the word I'm looking for, to sort of deal with the threat of Jeff the cab driver. He at the end of the day, he's sort of realizes his situation is and is absolutely confined to it. So at least that was sort of my interpretation of this final scene for sure. So yeah, I agree. Courtney Reviews, I agree. It sort of was, in many ways, maybe a little bit redundant. I see what you're saying there, where we already knew this. I guess it was sort of a further reinforcement of this sort of, I guess, sadness of Saul Goodman's life, Gene Takovic's life. So yeah, I agree. I think we could have definitely seen a different ending to this episode for sure. Something akin to a stronger cliffhanger, I think. Yeah, it was sort of a weird vibe to this episode. If I had to sum it up, just sort of, after sort of going over it now a little bit, it's sort of, I sort of like a bittersweet comedy. That's kind of what the vibe I got, just very bittersweet for Gene. He got to embrace it, but he realizes he never can really go back just based on his life right now. There's a lot of comedic nature to this episode. He got to sort of enact these scams against Marion and Jeff, and he ripped off the mall which he works in. I mean, stuff that Saul did all the time. The sort of victimless crimes in his mind, where no one, and at least that's the way he interprets it all. And yeah, it was again a lot of mixed emotions for sure. I think if we had the OG Jeff the cab driver, I think that would have just by definition made this episode better. If we had the actual actor, the recast really hurt visually, definitely. And I think by definition, the episode would have been better if we had the original actor, but it sort of is what it is. At XYZKRA, the teaser was Saul speaking to Nippy. I don't know about that. It definitely sounded like a woman's voice. I'll have to go back and listen to that again. I think they may have it here. Yeah, so again, I don't know if I definitely can't play it probably, but again, it's a teaser here that's overlaid with Saul talking to a woman, I believe, and we see again, it's every single teaser has been sort of a black and white shots. Again, not every again they've sort of mixed up the sort of scene with the dialogue. So again, some food for thought for sure. At Mill M, thank you so much for the super chat. I meant the writer's part was a bit sloppy. The second guard could definitely stay and watch. Do you think Gene will be arrested by the FBI? Okay, I see what you. So yeah, you were sort of saying the writing was naive. That was your opinion. So yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying there, but I mean, at the end of the day, the sort of, I mean, if this sort of situation was the case, I mean, maybe this mall doesn't really experience a lot of a crime where they only have one security guard and the other security guard kind of does the rounds, and this is just the way it was. And they didn't have the sort of state of the art security with all like the sort of laser trip wires that you see in those action movies and stuff like that, because it's sort of maybe a mall that doesn't have a lot of crime, maybe. So that's, I guess that's kind of what they were going for there for sure. I mean, I guess you're entitled to sort of, I guess, critique the writing for sure. That's your opinion. Do you think Gene will be arrested by the FBI? I don't know. That's the great question right there. That is the sort of big question for sure. Will the sort of DEA FBI hammer come down on Gene? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I don't think he's gonna end in prison. I don't think he will. Not too sure. But yeah, I don't know. I have no basis by which to back that up. Again, there's really not. It just sort of, we're just totally rampantly speculating here. But I don't know. I don't see the sort of the arrest of Gene. I don't see him in prison. He's sort of already. I mean, this metaphorical prison, if you will. I don't know if that definitely counts. I mean, it's probably way better to have Gene's life than actually be in federal prison for the rest of your life. To tell you the truth. But yeah, I don't know. That's a big question right there for sure, Admiral M. And yeah, I see what you're getting at there for sure. And thank you so much for the super chat. Again, it's something I'm going to have to ruminate on for sure after watching this episode at Mill M about what's going to happen to Gene in the long run and what I think is going to be his final fate. So Courtney reviews, if they would have ended it with him going through his shoebox and looking at a photo of Kim or something, it would have been better episode for me. I wish they would have teased what's coming next. Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. This episode, again, it was very clear what they were doing. It was, I mean, the premise is, Gene becomes Saul again. It was his one opportunity to become Saul in order to rid himself of this problem of him getting made when he said, I'm going to fix it myself to Ed to disappear. So that was kind of the premise. He got to embrace Saul, but he knows he can't truly embrace it when he saw that shirt and tie combo. I almost wish, I don't know why they didn't have it in color. I wish they could have at least had the shirt and tie in color or something to that effect. I wasn't expecting the whole episode to be black and white. I thought that even that would be a pretty good metaphor if the shirt was in color and then of course he leaves it behind because, he knows he can never go back to that life again. Again, like you said, we kind of already knew that based on the episode Uno when he's watching those Saul Goodman commercials, but yeah, again, it was kind of it was pretty straightforward. That was kind of the premise of the episode. It would have been nice if they maybe incorporated another aspect of it that had a little bit more of a cliffhanger in nature. I see what you're saying there at Courtney Reviews. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward what the premise of this episode was. So at Sam Jimenez, yeah, I talked about that a little bit earlier. Take $5 million versus $20 million in high-end merchandise, or $20,000 in high-end merchandise. I wonder what, and one is going to cause me to get a concussion and have to stay in a men's room for 12 hours. I wonder which one I'm going to take. But I mean, I don't know. I guess he was kind of a dumb criminal who kind of was. It was more about the thrill. It was more about like Howard Hamlin said, screw the money. Like you did it for fun. You get off to it. So. I mean, me personally, I would have taken the $5 million. I don't know about other people out there in the chat if they would have risked getting a concussion and sitting on in a bathroom for 12 hours for some to maybe go to jail for decades. But yeah, so that's true. Sam Fisher. I mean, the way he was sort of presented as this sort of dumb criminal, I thought maybe he didn't even know about the $5 million. That is an interesting point. I sort of thought of that for sure at Sam Fisher. That definitely came to mind. So, and again, I feel like I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but it again, in the grand scheme of things, the recast wasn't ideal, and I wish that Jeff was more of a worthy adversary instead of this very easily manipulated character. It wasn't what I was expecting, but so I made my I feel like I made my opinions on it. I've made my opinions on it known in this live stream. So I mean, I definitely think the writing made sense just based on how they needed to deal with this sort of plot detail. They were sort of written into a corner. They only have sort of they only have what 3 episodes left now, 4 episodes before this aired. So I understand why they wrote it this way, but again, I don't really know. I don't really know how to feel about all this. So yeah, at Pierre Aguilera, yeah, you wonder, like, why would he agree to rob them all? You wonder if this could have been written in a way where, like I said, Jeff was a better adversary, where Saul could have somehow manipulated him, where he couldn't turn him in even for the $5 million, something more tense like that. So, at Sam Jimenez, Twitter is destroying this episode. I don't use Twitter, so I'll take your word for it. So, but yeah, I kind of just wish Jeff could have been, a more willing adversary than this sort of dumb criminal. So. At Relax and Sleep, that's an interesting point. Jeff fell in with the wrong crowd in Albuquerque. Perhaps he didn't rat out Saul because of the criminal code. Maybe I could see that. But at the same time, if he was truly, I mean, again, like, why would he rob the mall? Again, as Pierre Aguilera said, couldn't he just extort Saul? Maybe. But again, they sort of talked about that a little bit earlier in the episode. It's about you've always wanted to be in the game, and it was about the thrill for him, I guess. So yeah, the criminal code, that's interesting about not being a rat. I haven't considered that. If he ran with a bad crowd, and maybe you don't rat, maybe you don't do it. So yeah, Courtney Reviews. I actually talked about that a little earlier in my stream, but I don't know how big of a football fan you are. But when they mentioned Martinez, I definitely remembered. I believe Taylor Martinez, the Nebraska quarterback, because he had that really exciting run in a conference championship game. And I remember the security guard said, I thought this was the year, and Texas wasn't even ranked. And we can see right here that they were completely undefeated and lost to unranked Texas in October of 2010. And he even said next week is Oklahoma State, and that's who they played in real life at Courtney Reviews. And I talked about this. This apparently happens in October of 2010. And I believe Dylan 2 times pointed this out to me in a super chat, and thank you again so much for pointing this out, where, they say that, Granite State probably took place in early 2010, and Walter White died in September of 2010 on his 50th birthday. So all of this happened about a month after Walter White died, but at the same time, after Saul got, vacuumed is the word I see online now, but after he got extracted to Omaha, he was probably out here for only about maybe 5-6 months. Courtney Reviews from what I'm seeing based on the dialogue here. So I always wondered what year this would take place. So, maybe it was 2010, 2011. OMG, we might be getting that phone call in the next episode. Yeah, maybe. I mean, Thomas Schnauz did say we're not going to address it, and then he said he was joking about it like I talked about yesterday. But yeah, maybe we will. Maybe we will get that phone call for. Oh, yeah, you're right, because where are you going to be on? That's true. Where are you going to be in November? Again, Saul's birthday is what, November? Again, it's November 2010. I always forget the date, the specific date. It's Saul Goodman's birthday on his license plate. But yeah, that's true, because he definitely was going back there for the Cinnabons every week. It wasn't like he was going there every day. November 12th at 3 p.m. So yeah, it makes sense again, because they were talking and they did sort of win game after game after game after the loss to Texas. So again, I don't know. I guess we could count the number of Cinnabons and how many times he went there. So, again, I don't know if it's going to be actually I don't know if they're sort of going to go actually to they're going to base it off the actual Nebraska football schedule in 2010. But thank you, Nero. Thank you very much for that. The memory technique. Now I won't forget that. 11/12. Now how can I forget Saul's birthday anymore? So anytime I talk about it, now it's 11/12. Now I won't forget. So. Yeah, that's a great point, Courtney Reviews. We maybe will get that phone call in the next episode. Hadn't even considered that. If we go by this 2010 theory, yeah, absolutely. So, Yeah, that's the thing. You said the Gene timeline should have been 2011, 2013. Yeah, I thought it would maybe be years after all this happened, but it's pretty crazy to think that it's only a couple months. It's very, very close based on this dialogue to the Breaking Bad timeline. So, Pierre Aguilar, how would I rate this episode? It definitely wasn't my favorite episode of this season by far. I mean, how could you compare this to Rock and Hard Place or Plan and Execution or even Fun and Games? I mean, how could you compare it to any of those? I don't think it's possible. So, how would I rate it? Again, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I have to think about it. Maybe I'll have to watch it another time for sure. Before I rate this episode at Pierre Aguilar. So I mean, by definition, I don't think anyone can say this was their favorite episode of the season. I mean, how can you compare it to Planner Execution and Rock and Hard Place? It was definitely different. It was very different. It felt very removed from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad because it really was. It was in the Gene Takovic timeline, and we've only seen 5 episodes of it so far. So at UD Reviews, yeah, the ring he got from Marco was Marco's ring, and he got it after he passed away when they were pulling that scam in the alley in the episode entitled Marco, and it was given to him after Marco's funeral in that episode, right before he went back to Albuquerque from Cicero. So at Juan Jose Tolero Garcia, can't wait for the Nippy spinoff about the fake dog. That is funny there. So and yeah, Nero, I do wonder. I do wonder what's going to happen next week. I do sort of. Again, I have no idea. I have no idea if we're going to continue in the Gene timeline, or if we're going to go into the back to the Breaking Bad timeline. It's definitely the sort of $5 million question, if you will. So ooh, so yeah, I think with all that being said, I think that pretty much sums up this episode here. I feel like I made my points made in respect to this episode, so I'm probably gonna end the stream there. But it is now it's now officially Tuesday here on the East Coast. So, but yeah, I really appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. I mean, based on the chat, it was a pretty polarizing episode for sure. I mean, I hear people are talking about it online as well. I'll have to see what people are saying about this episode and about how about the first appearance of Gene after we all waited for it for so long. But yeah, as always, really appreciate the chat tonight. Really appreciate all the super chats. Really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Really appreciate again at Dylan 2 times. Great call there on the timeline. I really appreciate that for sure in respect to proximity to Granite State and Ozymandias. Thank you so much for pointing that out to me. But yeah, really appreciate everyone for tuning in. Definitely planning on making some videos this week. I mean, we'll see. Kind of an interesting episode to make videos on for sure. So again, may have to take some time to think about it, but we'll see. So yeah, again, really appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. If you enjoyed this stream, you're still hanging around, I really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. The support would really mean a lot. Again, thank you, thank you again for everyone for watching, and have a great, have a great day. If you're in the somewhere else in the U.S., have a great rest of your night. Other than the East Coast, it's already Tuesday. And thank you so much, Trish D, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you guys around. Thanks again for tuning in.